Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. I'm so happy. I have Jenae Nelson in the home with me right now, and it's been a couple weeks since we connected, but it's finally worked out. So Jenae, would you please introduce yourself in your tribal way as much as possible? If it's in your language, great. If it's not, that's fine. Not everybody speaks their language, and some languages are dead.
Yes, so I am a descendant of the Bois Forte band of Chippewa, also known as Ojibwe, and we also can call ourselves Anishinaabe. My mother's a registered tribal member, and so it's my mother's side of the family that is Ojibwe, and we come from the northern top part of Minnesota, near Nett Lake, and that one thing that we're really known for up there is our wild rice, and we do a lot of wild ricing. We're woodland tribes. We also enjoy beadwork, and that's something that's really important to our family.
Cool. Would you please share something that you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ? It can be pretty much anything. A story, a celebration, a way of life, a ceremony. What do you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel? So the gospel really is a gift that my grandfather gave to our family. And so this is my mother's father, and he was a convert to the church, and he just really resonated with the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon converted him, and he said his testimony was that when he read it, he knew that this was his people, and that was the testimony that he received. And so I always felt like it was super significant that he had received that witness. Not every Native American feels that way, and that's fine. But he received that witness, and it was something that was very, very special to me to know that my ancestors did get to witness Christ, got to feel the nail prints in his hands and his side. They are witnesses of the Savior, the resurrected Lord. And that's something that I think is a priceless heritage, and amazing that my grandfather received that witness and that he was brought back into the covenant after being separated from that covenant. And that he always said that he had respect for the old ways, but he knew, and he had a testimony of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, and that was the greatest heritage he could give us ever. And he told us that if all the things that he could leave behind, it would be his testimony of the Book of Mormon. And so I do cherish my heritage for lots of reasons, but that they are witnesses of Christ. I think that's something that's really profound. And that those that get converted back to the church can remember that heritage as being a witness, and that they have that, and we can continue to be modern day witnesses of Christ. It's a powerful part of my testimony. Yeah. So your grandpa was the first in your family that you know of that joined the restored church.
So this is actually an interesting story, and we thought that he was the first. But 4 generations above him, he has actually a white grandfather who was the son of Nauvoo era pioneer, Latter-day Saint, and he was it's their last name is Glean. Thomas Glean was my ancestor, and so the whole family converted, and the grandfather, or the father of Thomas Glean, helped to build the Nauvoo temple. He died, passed away, left his wife widowed with all of these children. And then after Joseph was martyred and it was time to migrate out west, my ancestor Thomas Glean decided to stay back, and he apostatized from the church.
which is really tragic. But the rest of the family ended up going to Utah, and one of them, Alice Geen, is the grandmother of Spencer W. Kimball. So a powerful heritage there that we're related to. But then I'm from the apostate lines, why we didn't know about it. But he married a Native American woman, and he ended up dying on his way home from the Civil War in a steamboat explosion.
No way.
And the gospel was completely lost from that side of the family. And so his wife ended up raising their daughter alone, and then they stayed on the reservation, and then that part of our family history was lost forever. But it was 4 generations later, and this is significant because the Doctrine and Covenants talks about there being when there's a curse on a family, for it to last for 4 generations.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah. It's really profound to me that it was exactly 4 generations that the covenant came back into our family, and that those lines were restored. And we've been able to now do the work and to seal those families together, which has been really powerful. But also as it serves as it's a cautionary tale for me to always be diligent. That in 1 generation you can lose it for 4 generations, and this is a Anishinaabe principle, and lots of other tribes think about our relationships in these ways. But like we really do impact generations. We have the 7 generation principle that everything that you do is affected by 7 generations above you and will affect 7 generations below you. And then but there's something interesting about the gospel and that 4 generation that there's a prophecy in there. But if you do the math, that 4 generations is like you in the middle of those 7 generations, right?
Yeah.
So there's profound impact.
Oh my gosh. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm like, I never want to be that person that loses the light of the gospel.
Yeah, for sure. My husband actually says that a lot. He's like, why would I discount what my pioneer ancestors have lived? They lived so faithfully. And I'm like, me too.
Yeah. Who am I to change what the faith and the heritage that has been handed down to me? It feels a little different when it's newer in the family, but I do think that there's something about the wisdom of your ancestors that just can't be so easily discarded, or it shouldn't be so easily discarded.
Yeah, I agree. That's so cool. That's way cool.
Yeah, and my grandpa was alive. He's passed away now, sadly, but he was alive to learn of that. And he was so thrilled to know that he had that. And his patriarchal blessing talks about his noble heritage. And that has like kind of a dual meaning now for our family, and knowing that like not only does he have this incredible Native American heritage, but also he has pioneer heritage, which who could have ever guessed?
You should join Daughters of Utah Pioneers with me.
Right, I know. And like, whoever thought I'd be in that club?
That's funny. So, okay, that's way cool. So, but then your grandfather joined the church and was he married to a Native person?
No, he was married to a white woman. Okay.
And your grandfather was a boarding school survivor?
There was multiple generations who actually went. So, it started with, I believe my great grandmother at Carlisle, and then,
wow, that is a lot of generations.
It has been a lot of generations. So
3 generations that you know of were in boarding school.
Not necessarily the same one, but they did.
In boarding school.
Yeah. My grandfather went to an Indian school, and it was a little bit different. It wasn't a boarding school, but still that by then the indoctrination of the boarding school had really, completely changed our family, and they were. Sadly, my grandfather was not taught the language, and that was something that he mourned. He mourned over that because even though he had a deep and abiding faith, he also was he was Ojibwe. He wanted to speak Ojibwe-Moan, but yet it was not taught to him because his parents thought that that was associated with a lesser way of life, and that would somehow impede his ability to succeed. And so they were adamant that he did not learn the language, even though he heard it in the home because his parents would speak it when they were in trouble, right? But, but never to them, because they didn't want them to know the language. But my grandfather oftentimes would talk about how sad that made him. And as I grew up and learned more about my tribe and our culture, and this is common across tribes, is this idea of how important the language really is to the identity of the people.
Totally.
And in my tribe, you can't even participate in any of the ceremonies, or at least officiate in the ceremonies, if you don't speak the language. So because the belief is that you can't speak to the Creator unless you're speaking in your native tongue. So this had multiple traumatic impacts on the people, because they're severed from being able to talk to their God, right? But a lot of people in my tribe were converted to Christianity, right? And so they found other ways to worship God, and that the way that they did worship changed. But because of that, they had to leave a lot of their ceremonies, and they had to separate themselves from the old ways. And then those beautiful traditions were not handed down. And not only were they not handed down, but they were quite frowned upon, or they would be done in secret. And a lot of that has to do with actually some of the government legislature that existed up until the 1970s, as you know. But there were many layers of separation that made it so that my family was not able to carry on a lot of the beautiful traditions.
Yeah. Wow. It's like, it just kind of makes your heart, like, even though it's you I'm listening to, it makes my heart mourn for you and your family. Like, every time I hear one of those stories,
it hurts me. It does. It hurts me. And it's difficult to describe intergenerational trauma to people that don't understand it. Yeah. And, but I really love James Bukolich says that the moment that you realize that you're feeling pain that's not your own pain is the moment that you realize you're connected to your ancestors, and there's healing that needs to occur.
Whoa.
And I remember that. I remember feeling this. I feel pain, and this isn't mine.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a white passing Native American, I don't walk around the world in the same way as a person of color, per se, but yet there's this part of me that I carry the pain of my ancestors, and that's something that a lot of people will never quite understand.
Yeah,
that there's healing that needs to happen there, and like my grandpa always wanted to give me a name, an Indian name, but that's another thing you cannot do unless you speak the language. And he got teary. He got emotional about that with me. It was just a great regret. But he did give me a pipe. He made me a pipe, as I showed you earlier, and with a bear on it. And the bear's looking over, watching and protecting. And that's for me to watch and protect of my mom and my sister. And I think that had he been able to give me a name, that's what he would have given me.
Yeah. Wow.
And when I started learning about the boarding schools, and especially Carlisle, and the philosophy, kill the Indian, save the man, and really the whole idea was to just strip them of their native identity, and because they knew they weren't going to kill off the Indians through war, so they're like their tactic changed. Yeah, make them white, essentially make them white. And that
brainwash them like Mao did with his way.
Yeah. So when I started reading about those boarding schools, I remember being at my kitchen table, reading about Carlisle, knowing that my grandma was there, that I had letters written by her, because she had to send reports to them how she was doing, and she actually was able to get a college degree in teaching, which is absolutely amazing. And again, I thought similar to my grandpa thinking he was the first convert, I thought I was the first college graduate.
Yeah.
But finding out that
cool.
my great grandma was a college graduate, she got a teaching degree, but she was never able to teach because she was Native American.
And so she ended up just raising chickens, and that's how she was able to provide for our family, is raising chickens. But she was well read, and she taught that to her children. And so that was another thing that was passed down to my family, is a love of reading and learning. And I really appreciate that part of my heritage. But as I was reading about these boarding schools, I remember being at the kitchen table, reading about the things, and I was just weeping. And why am I having this response? And that is what I thought of. I thought of James Vukovic's quote, and that truly I am feeling the pain of my ancestors. That was profound.
Wow.
It was really profound. And the other times I've had that experience have been with my ancestors' joy in the temple.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so it's not all. This is another point that I think is really important to make, is that not everything that we inherited is pain and trauma. We also inherited strength.
Yes.
Deep
and
strength.
Humor.
And humor. Yes.
And just like interests in different things, like creativity, like I think, yes, definitely.
And a completely different way of, and it's some of the things I've learned, because it's really sad, but we have to learn. Those of us who have been taken from our culture, we have to learn about our cultures from books. And it's sad, right? But I have. And one thing I learned, actually, this is from a friend of mine who grew up on, he actually grew up on a Navajo reservation, even though he was an immigrant. His family immigrated from Honduras. And so he was not actually Native American, but he fit right in, and he learned a lot about Native Americans. So he teaches cultural psychology at BYU. And he has been teaching me about some Native American thing. I'm like, whoa, I thought that was just a thing of my family. I didn't realize that was actually like a Native American thing. One of them is silence. And I frequently have this experience where I'm on the phone. And I'm just sitting there because I'm thinking, and I don't respond because I'm still thinking, and I don't have the response yet. So I'm just being quiet, and people are like, "Are you hello?" And I'm like, "No, I'm thinking. Just give me a minute." But I'm like really comfy with silence.
Yeah,
because this is the way, right? Like we think before we talk. And I just thought this was a family trait, but this is I'm like, oh wow. So
one of mine, when I went to BYU first time, I had the hardest time making eye contact with people. And my advisor in Multicultural Student Services office, she was like, she pointed it out to me one time. She's like, you never do that. And that's a Navajo thing. And I'm like, I didn't even, like, it was just something I grew up doing. So sometimes when I'm sitting here in this room interviewing somebody else, I can tell that I'm making them uncomfortable because I'm like staring at them because I unlearned it. No, but it really is a thing. And that it's difficult to know because also we don't go around talking about, and now we're going to do this Native American thing together. Like we do all these white things too, but this is specifically Native American. Like we don't talk like that. Yeah. It's so funny. That is way funny.
Yeah, I do. But I think that's just like a silly illustration of how sad it is for individuals like us who have been taken away from the culture, who weren't, didn't necessarily raised on the reservation, but even those who are raised on the reservation anymore aren't necessarily having these types of, traditional experiences either. Yeah. Because times have changed. Nor should they. I mean, as a people, we're continually evolving and changing and growing too. Yeah. So it's not like we should be stuck in a museum era.
Totally.
Right? But a lot of people do think that we should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you have a cool family history. And you were raised in the church. Mm-hmm. So, and now I know that you have grown children, which, like, if I had met you on the street, I would have been like, you're too young.
Oh, I'm old enough.
In fact, when I looked at your profile, when you're like, and my senior in high school, and I'm like, she's not old enough to have.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
So, you have a PhD?
That's right.
Okay, so tell me about your education journey.
Yeah, so I did actually, to just give a little bit of background for your audience. So I was baptized at 8, but I didn't actually go. My mom didn't take me to church. She was an excommunicated member. And so I still had to go through a conversion process.
Got it.
And I did that when I was 16, actually. And,
okay.
And so I came into the church at that point, but really did grow up outside of the church.
Yeah.
And I had really taken a rough path and lots of self-destructive behaviors. Almost didn't graduate from high school, and college was just never really on my mind. It didn't even seem like a possibility for me. And so I lived in a homeless shelter for a while, and we were just very, very, very poor. It was just me and my mom and my sister for most of my childhood. And so we knew deep poverty. So something like a PhD was just like completely off my radar.
Like not even in a dream.
Right.
That was like,
right.
Yeah.
But I did, after I converted to the church, I moved to Utah.
And so how did you come by the church?
I came, this is, I'll give the abbreviated version because this could take probably a whole hour. But I met my dad when I was 16.
Okay.
So met him through a DNA test, and he was.
So wait, is it your dad the Ojibwe? Or?
No, my mom is.
Your mom is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up with my mom and my Native American family.
Oh, okay.
Which is why I'm a little bit more connected, even though I'm only a quarter Native American. That's why I'm a little bit more connected to my Native side, because that's like really all I knew.
Got it.
Versus my white side, I didn't grow up with them.
Got it.
But I met my dad. He actually was an active member of the church, and my mom at the time, like I said, was excommunicated, not an active member. And she ended up actually getting rebaptized, and came back. And then we went through the temple on the same day. So my mom is now a faithful Latter-day Saint, and never actually left the faith in her heart, though. She always had a testimony,
but
which
living
is
the standards.
quite remarkable. Yeah, but wasn't necessarily living in accordance with those beliefs. But she always believed, always had a testimony. But my dad really, when he came into my life, helped me to start to see for the first time really a loving God, because prior to that, I didn't believe in a loving God. I couldn't believe in a loving God because my life had been so challenging and difficult that I couldn't see evidence that God cared about me anywhere. And I didn't understand how God could care for some of his children and not others. So there couldn't be a God in my mind. So I was pretty, agnostic at best, but atheist probably in some times of my life. But, mainly just because of that reason, I didn't think that there could be a God. But then when I met my dad, things really started to change for me. And my dad was loving and caring, and he was a faithful member of the church, and he still is. And his testimony was so bright that he couldn't contain it, and it just came out of him. And it spilled onto me, and it caught me on fire. And I was ready to claim that heritage that my grandpa had brought to our family, and step up to the person I needed to become. And so that did change. It changed the trajectory of my whole life. The gospel did, finding the Lord, and finding out who he really was, that he really was like loving and caring, but also wise, and that he would allow me to go through some hard things for a minute to shape my character. I can see that now, and it's easier for me to understand it now, but I didn't then. And there are still times when, you wonder why does God let me go through these hard things? But usually just a little bit of time makes you understand a little bit better,
Yeah.
But I had received a patriarchal blessing. It talks a lot about getting an education. And so I always kind of knew I would do that, but I just didn't know how because it seems so out of reach. But I did end up finishing my bachelor's degree in my 30s after my kids were
So at what
older.
point did you get married?
I got married quite young. I got married after a year of college, 19, almost 20, and then started having kids around 22. So just like really, really, really young. But it ended up being God's perfect timing because I had like fertility problems that I had hysterectomy at 29.
Holy
so
moly.
I wouldn't have any of my kids if I didn't get an early start.
Yeah.
So God knew what he was doing. I wouldn't change it. I obviously loved going back to school in my 30s because I had so much wisdom and experience and knowledge. Well, as much as a 30-year-old has, but more than I would have when I was 20, right?
Yeah.
So finishing in my mid 30s was just a privilege. It was awesome. And I appreciated it. I loved it. And I went right from undergrad into grad school. And then I did 2 years as a postdoc. I worked for Baylor University and Harvard medical school, and it really just kind of surreal experience. Like somebody like me shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. I mean, it's,
so what are your degrees?
I have a doctorate degree in psychology. I'm a developmental psychologist, and I mean, really informed by my indigenous perspective of relationality. I'm a systems psychologist, so I really care about systems and the way that we are influenced by multiple levels, not just as an individual. So I don't really like viewing the people as individuals. I like seeing them as part of an interconnected network, which is very indigenous. But I think that that's an important way not only to interact with Native American folks, but also people in general. I think that's something that we get kind of wrong in psychology. But anyway, so developmental systems psychologist, and then my postdoc was neuroscience and character development.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's been really a privilege, and I think just so much gratitude because of where I've come from, and it's just how unlikely it is.
Yeah. And how has your faith played into your degrees, or is it easy for you to integrate it? Because I know in higher ed right now, faith is kind of poo-pooed on, and so was it easy for you to integrate your faith into that, or did you just keep it separate because that's how they wanted you to?
That's a good question, and I would say both. So my faith is, I mean, I would definitely say I'm very faithful. It was really, I had a vision and a dream that got me on the path to start what I'm doing. And so it started with faith. It was always been a faith journey. I always knew that God was guiding me and wanting me to take this journey. And so it always had to be about him. It always had to be about purpose. And it always had to be about, a more transcendent purpose than just like, I'm just doing this for me. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, besides that, I never would have done it anyways without heavenly nudge, because it's just not something that I would have pursued or even believed in myself to be able to do. But then my approach to psychology definitely has, because psychology is a science, and I am also a scientist. It's one of the hats that I wear. There tends to be a sense of compartmentalization, which can sometimes be difficult, but you do have to do it. And how I do it is I see it as just another witness. So science is one way to get at truth, but there's lots of ways of knowing. We know that, right? Mm-hmm. So, intuiting things, is one, right? But also following the Spirit, the Holy Ghost is another. Obviously, oral traditions and, wisdom of your elders, another important way of knowing. There's lots of ways of knowing, and I don't see them as competing. And I don't see them as mutually exclusive. I see them as all playing a part in this beautiful picture of truth. And so science is just another lens, and I don't see it as competing. However, I never take off my lens of faith. It's always there. I can't take it off. It's how I live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so awesome. Do you know who Anthony Rivera is? He teaches, he's Native. He teaches in the BYU religion department. He did a fireside recently here in Salt Lake, and I went to it, and he was talking about covenants. And he was saying, like, teaching us some etymology about the word covenant and different things. But I had just barely, like, that week been talking with my daughter, who's an 8th grader, about some biology that she had at school.
Yeah.
And she used some words that he used about covenants. And I'm like, oh my word. Like, I think what you just described is that Heavenly Father is giving us multiple witnesses in multiple ways. Whatever, if your eyes are and ears are open, you will have that extra witness. So that's cool what you just said.
Yeah. And we too, that one of the biggest mistakes we make is saying there's only one way to see. And I think that bees can teach us a lot about this. So bees have compound eyes, which means that they have like multiple lenses, right?
Yeah.
And because of their multiple lenses, they have this remarkable peripheral vision. Like they can see like way more than we can, right? And it's because of this compound vision. And so that is my goal as a researcher, as a disciple of Christ, is to have compound vision. I want multiple lenses.
Cool.
Yeah, we can learn a lot from these little analogies, but I'm like, I mean, Heavenly Father made them that way. We should be similarly pursuing ways to expand our vision.
Yeah, that is so cool. I'll think about that one for a while. Yeah. So how many children do you have?
I have 4 children.
4.
I have, so my oldest is 22 and he's at Salt Lake Community College. And then my second youngest is currently in Brazil on a mission. He's been out there for a year. And then my third is a senior in high school, a daughter. So my oldest are 2 boys. And then my youngest is a daughter. And she's in 10th grade. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I was completely, as I was learning about adolescent development in grad school, I was actually in the home raising teenagers,
practicing
God's humor. That's what it was. They're like, let me actually teach you about. So you think you know about adolescent development. Just wait until you have.
You're like, that's not in the book.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, the I hate you, mom. Like that should be standard textbook, right?
How have your children, how have they supported you as you've done your career change from stay-at-home mom to now you're a professor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I mean, my youngest was a first grader when I started going back. And so they didn't really feel my absence. And I'm grateful for that. But even if they had, I do think that it's really important for children to learn independence and to learn that they're so capable. Like mom is just kind of like the captain of the ship, but there's all these worker bees on the ship, right? It's like, we're all here to help out. And so if the house falls apart when mom is gone, then maybe I didn't make a good system. Right. So, thankfully, I have a really supportive husband, and then my kids just really know how to pitch in and take care of themselves. I think that that's really important when you're doing the kind of work that we're doing. But also, I think that it's a good way to live, even if you're not, a professor or you work full time. I think it's really important for the family to be contributing. Everyone kind of pulling their weight in a way, but They helped a lot with that. They also saw me changing, which I think was really affirming for me, in that they could see that I was learning and growing, and then it kind of lit a fire in my children to learn and grow. And they've been really intrinsically motivated in school, which has been really neat to see that has been something that's rubbed off on them. I think we have a fear as moms that if we do pursue education or career, that it will negatively impact our kids. But I was actually really surprised by how much it benefited my family, and that they're better because of this pursuit that I had. But that's just how God works.
Yeah.
Anytime he asks you to do something, you just know it's going to bless you. Even if there's like short-term sacrifices, there's always long-term blessings. And so you just kind of trust in that, and trust that the Lord is going to provide for your family. And it's really, a PhD is not for everyone. It's not going to be the right thing for everyone. But there's lots of different
missions and purposes and callings in life, then everyone needs to find their own.
Yeah. So do you see like the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like the family proclamation, things that you know and have learned and have lived about your heritage and your education and just your lived experience? So 4 different aspects. How have those things come together, and have they made your family life better? Have they witnessed of each other? Tell like your relationship with your spouse. Speak to that.
Yeah, that's a really complicated question. So I think that sometimes we want answers to be really simple, and we want for the answers to be the same throughout our life and to be applied to people in the same exact way, so that it's really easy to know right from wrong. But it really turns out that the context and the time and the people in situations really influence what is right and what is not right. So taking the proclamation, for example, I felt really compelled to be home with my children, and I felt like that was the right thing for me to do. And I wanted to raise my children, and I didn't have the privilege of having a stay-at-home mom as a mom, and that is a privilege because my mom had to work, and I was raised in daycares, and I'm okay. I turned out all right, but I didn't want that for my children, and I felt really driven that for me and my family situation, I needed to be home. But that was something that was very personal to me, and but that happened to align really well with the proclamation, for example. And I really do have a witness of the divine role of motherhood. I just don't think a mom can be replaced. Moms are amazing. And, but moms come in all different kinds, right? And have all different kinds of circumstances. And my mom is no less amazing because she was unable to be a stay-at-home mom for me. And so I think the Lord really does understand circumstances, and that things change too. So then as I, was sending my youngest off to first grade, like I mentioned, I had just such a strong feeling that I could not stay home anymore. That God was like, it is time for you to act. It is time for you to give back. It was powerful, and it was an admonition from the Lord, and other people wouldn't get that answer.
Yeah.
But that was for me. God was like, you can't just stay home, and it's time for you now to start giving back. And so that was the answer for me at that time. And my husband throughout the whole thing was a partner in these decisions. So he was similarly receiving revelation and inspiration, but giving me room to have my decisions, which I really appreciated, but then receiving his own witness that it was the right thing to do. And we took turns. So when I was a stay-at-home mom, I did most of the house type stuff, right? I was pretty heavily involved in homemaking. And my husband, I put him through school and supported his career and did all of that. And I felt like that was the right thing to do at that time. And then when I started going back to school, he took on some of the things that I used to do, cooking and cleaning and laundry and things like that. And then that was the right time and right way for us to exist. And so I learned through this experience that the proclamation should be a living document for us in terms of how we interpret it. Kind of similar to our patriarchal blessings, that it's like these things are like Leohonas, like the spindle is going to point in different directions at different times, but ultimately leading us to Christ. That's the ultimate objective and goal, is to be found on the Lord's side, and that it can look all different ways. And so I'm not trying to say that there's moral relativism. I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that there are eternal principles that lead us to Christ,
But sometimes the ways in which we get there look different, even though we're all on the same covenant path.
Yeah.
So I think more complexly about that, and I don't think so much in terms of there's a right answer for everyone, specifically pertaining to the proclamation.
Cool. So this past week, I interviewed Michelle Reyes, and we talked about, I asked her, why does she stay as a faithful member of the church? So I'm going to ask you that. Why do you stay as a faithful member of the church? And what encouragement do you have for other Native Americans who may or may not be members of the church, who are trying to reconcile different parts of their lives with the church? What makes you want to stay in the church, and what would you encourage them?
So I think this is really great that I get to end where I started with my grandpa.
Yeah.
Because I just really appreciate the opportunity to honor him on this podcast. So when my grandpa passed away a couple of years ago, we I think our whole family really felt this desire to reclaim our heritage. And it was really cool to see this kind of change in our family and us learning more about our heritage. And but the thing that just struck me the most is what I said at the beginning, is that the thing that my grandpa really wanted us to have more than anything, even more than this beautiful heritage that he had passed down to us, is that he had this heritage of faith. And he knew the Book of Mormon was true. And I know the Book of Mormon is true. And his testimony is deep inside of me. His testimony is part of me. And so I feel like if I were to leave the church, I would be leaving a part of my grandfather. And I'm not willing to do that. But more than that, I've developed a relationship with my Savior, and I just know how much I need him. Because the life that I've lived hasn't always been exemplar. And anything that I've accomplished or done in this life really has been because of the Savior and his enabling power. And the covenants I have, the power of the gospel has completely transformed me. And if you look in my family, the people who are active members of the church have a light about them. And I would say just continue to seek the light, stay with the light, stay with the living water. And it's easy to get distracted by the large and spacious building, because those people are loud, and a lot of them might even look like us. A lot of them might even be parts of us. But ultimately, we want to make it to the tree of life. We want to partake of God's love. And that love is light. It's living water. It changes lives. It completely changes lives. I am a witness of that. I'm a witness that life without the Lord is dark. And it is not life-giving. And I want to forever be attached to the love of God to his living water, through his prophets and apostles, through priesthood authority. I don't ever want to be cut off from that ever again. When our people have already been cut off, why would I do that as an individual when this great restoration has occurred in my family? I don't want to do that. I don't want to ever be cut off again. So I want to live in a way that really does honor my ancestors in the best sense, which would be to stay closest to the Lord and his covenants and his restored gospel and through his prophets. And I know that's found in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. While not a perfect institution, it's perfect gospel with a perfect Lord at the head. And that is my unfailing testimony.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Which That's an excellent segue to the last question. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to know that you belong to the tribe of Israel?
What it means that means a whole lot to me, because even though I don't necessarily have tribal affiliation, right? And that's something that's really difficult for some of us Native Americans. I have this other affiliation that is my primary identity as a child of God, and then as part of the tribe of Israel, and as a covenant, a child of the covenant, and that makes me feel like no matter where I go, I belong, and I belong to something that's bigger than me. And I think that's what we all really want. We all really desire to be part of a family, because we do recognize that we are related in this spiritual way that is ennobling, and we are, because of this royal heritage. We know we can do things with the strength of the Lord that we could not do on our own, and it gives me in particular, it gives me hope, hope for the future, and hope for my individual life, and it helps me to navigate really dark times, and knowing that no matter what, I'm part of this story that's bigger than me. And so I can kind of let go of myself sometimes and start to focus on a larger narrative and understanding my role in this beautiful tapestry. And I think it's so healing, particularly with somebody from a fractured family like mine, that is, where those lines of identity are very blurred and hard to discern. But this is something that I can count on and rely on as part of God's family.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been awesome. I've literally been sitting on the floor for about half an hour trying to figure out what to share with you today. I have actually had so many things come to mind, and they're all related, but it hasn't come in one continuous stream of thought. So I don't know how to share them all with you, except for I just read a conference talk and was reminded of the hymn, I Stand All Amazed. And so I think you should go listen to it if you want to listen to it. But I am going to read it to you because I've tried to sing it a couple times and my voice cracks. So I'm just going to read it to you. I stand all amazed at the love Jesus offers me, confused at the grace that so fully he proffers me. I tremble to know that for me he was crucified, that for me, a sinner, he suffered, he bled and died. Oh, it is wonderful that he should care for me, enough to die for me. Oh, it is wonderful, wonderful to me. I marvel that he would descend from his throne divine, to rescue a soul so rebellious and proud as mine, that he should extend his great love unto such as I, sufficient to own, to redeem, and to justify. Oh, it is wonderful that he should care for me, enough to die for me. Oh, it is wonderful, wonderful to me. I think of his hands pierced and bleeding to pay the debt. Such mercy, such love, and devotion can I forget? No, I will praise and adore at the mercy seat, until at the glorified throne I kneel at his feet. Oh, it is wonderful that he should care for me, enough to die for me. Oh, it is wonderful, wonderful to me. And I hope you have a super wonderful, awesome day. Tribe of Testimonies is not sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear how this podcast is affecting you. And I'm always looking for guests. If you or someone you know would be a great guest, you can reach me at tribeoftestimonies@gmail.com.